I now want to move on to the next part of the program, and I'll just hit pause here in case we need to open the rear doors if there are people who are coming for our keynote speaker. And while that's happening, it gives me great pleasure to introduce our interim provost and vice president academic, Dr. Elizabeth Evans, who will introduce our keynote speaker. Please join me in welcoming Liz.
Just waiting for the doors to close there. Thank you very much, Mike, and good afternoon to everyone. It is wonderful to be here with all of you on day one of Celebrate Teaching and Learning. This is an event I have come to look forward to, perhaps even more so this year, as we are once again able to share our love for teaching and learning in person. What makes this event so special is that it brings together faculty, students, and staff to share stories and lessons that have come from their experiences in the classroom or related to their preparatory work. We are all making our way through a period of time where we have had to rethink how we communicate. This is how we disseminate and receive information. It is how we grow and maintain connections. And it is the many speakers who have led sessions today and will tomorrow that are exemplifying the exceptionally capable and brilliant minds we have here at MRU. I can't think of a better way to celebrate your amazing accomplishments than to spend time learning from our colleagues, students, peers, as well as an impressive guest speaker joining us this afternoon. It is my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, who has been referred to as a true revolutionary in the learning industry. Lauren Waldman is ever curious and describes her one true purpose in this world as increasing our abilities to learn and to be better humans by understanding our brains. She is known as the learning pirate and applies her credentials in neuroscience to decode complex science about our brains, like how we learn and remember, and make knowledge accessible, transferable, and practical to learning and everyday life. Here I go, Christian. Her motto is YAR. Yeah. I was challenged to explore my inner pirate soul here. YAR sounds for you are really ready, and this is Lauren's motto. Lauren is sought after for her expertise in scientific learning design and her memorable experiential talks. She has created learning experiences for a broad range of sectors, which include banking, hospitality, information technology, tourism, retail, and of course, most significantly, education and applications for educational leadership. Today, Lauren will take us all on a journey through the brain to see how it really learns and creates memories in the form of an interactive talk called Joining Forces with Your Brain. Please join me in welcoming Lauren Waldman to our stage. Lauren, thank you for joining us and welcome to MRU.
You did great. That was a great YAR. That was a wonderful YAR. I'm just going to get set up and plugged in here, but what I would really love, you've all been sitting for at least 30 minutes now, 20, 30 minutes, and the one thing that the brain really needs to learn is blood getting up there. So if you wouldn't mind just standing up, taking a stretch, we got to get that blood going back up to your brain, because I think you know where it is right now, and it's not there. YAR. Well, there's the first secret blown. Now you know what that means. Sorry, guys, I'm having a hard time seeing up here. Take a stretch, take a breath, and watch me struggle with technology. Is anyone else convinced that everything's going to turn into a transformer one day? You are? There we go. Wow. You know, it's interesting being a speaker and seeing everybody's experience that comes before you, because it's really intimidating. You've got some great faculty here. I want to sit and listen to them. Thank you, Liz, for the amazing introduction. The spotlight's in my face. Catherine, can you stand up for a second, please? I'm here because of this woman. So if you like me, it's her. And if you don't, it's her. I've got a lot that I want to do with you. And, you know, I think you've already been lied to. They said it was a keynote. I don't like being a keynote. Can we just be a human? Can we just be human to human? First thing I need you to do, oh, there we go. Just look up just a little bit. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Anyone know what time it is right now? It's 3:09. What time do you usually get tired in the day? Yeah, right about now. So typically, this is the first sort of lesson when we're learning. You've got this amazing chemical in your brain called acetylcholine, and you start off like a full gas tank, but slowly throughout the day that goes down. And what happens when you're getting tired? Have you ever seen someone nod off before? Yeah, oh yeah. Got some lively ones in the front here. When we raise our heads up, as if we're looking to the sky, like we're looking at the natural sunlight for the first time, a beautiful chemical gets released from the back of our brain, and it signals it to, hey, let's get up, let's be alert. So that's the whole reason that we're doing this. Now, I'm not really a pirate. The evidence would be kind of contrary to what you're about to see, but the reason why I called my company Learning Pirate is because I realized that in order to change the way that we're doing things, I was going to have to be a little bit of a disruptor in the industry. Now, I did start in academia. I am now more in organizational L&D. I always love coming back to academia, though. But yeah, I've got this whole pirate thing going on. I stole my parents' car when I was like 4 years old. With my sister as my staff captain. So that's where the pirate stuff started. And then I might have worked on a cruise ship, so that really sort of solidified. I was the training officer for Royal Caribbean Cruise Lines. So I guess it sort of went in with the pirate theme. Contrary to these pictures, I actually did work. That's my beautiful ship, the Radiance of the Seas. I can tell you all about that during the reception if you want to know what it's like living on a cruise ship and working with 2,200 people and 2,500 guests day in and day out. That was crazy, but a lot of fun. Then I did this. I worked for all of these guys, all these corporates, and I learned a lot about my own learning. I've been a learning designer for several years in the organizational world, all over the world. I lived in Japan, Australia, all over the places. And one of the last jobs I had, though, that made me sort of transition back was because I thought I was working for him. I was convinced this is the guy who I was working for. I'm like, something's wrong here. I can't do this anymore. And by the time I was done with that, I already started discovering this wonderful thing of ours, this brain. And just so you know, I'm legit here. I do have these credentials. Now, here's a fun fact about learning in your brain. When you get to the prime age of 35, you've got really strong neural networks in there, and your behaviors and what you know is what you know. So when you go to learn, it's hard. There's not one scientist that I work with who won't tell you learning's not easy, it's hard. It's meant to be hard, but it's also meant to be incredibly joyous. So I got all these fancy certificates and all this knowledge on neuroscience. And this is what it looks like. If we're going to be friends in like an hour, I'm just going to show you all my ugly. This is me when I was first studying, when I was trying to learn, and people capturing me in a rage and a fit of trying to learn. So I went from like absolutely manic, and that table was about, I don't know, 8 feet long, full of white papers. And that was the first stage. And the second stage was this one. I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm ever going to do this. I don't know if I can do this or not. So really, really depressed, because sometimes learning could kick your butt, right? But then we get here. And as Liz so eloquently described, you get to the moment of yar. I believe in this so much, I actually branded myself. I know. I don't think my mom's seen that one yet. But this is where we want to get to. YAR for me was my first moment when I started studying neuroscience. And it was incredibly hard. I mean, if you're going to start with something, why not start with Harvard, right? Like, just set the bar low for myself. But I had failed math in grade 10. We broke up so epically. I'm pretty sure I bribed my grade 11 summer school teacher just to pass me. Science and we didn't have a good relationship either in high school. So for me to go back and to learn something when I had no knowledge about it was incredibly difficult. But when I finally got to that moment where I was waiting to take the final exam, these were online exams, and I'm sitting there, and I was going to find out instantly whether or not I was going to pass. And this was like a lot of studying, a lot of hard work, and I was terrified to hit that. You know that moment? You're like, oh my God, am I going to pass? Am I not going to pass? What's going to happen here? And I did. So this word, which by the way, I say all the time, before Learning Pirate ever happened, this is the way I communicate with somebody. If I'm in agreement with you, I'm like, oh yeah, yar. If I'm mad at you, I'm like, yar. This comes out of my mouth a lot, but then this was what that meant. I screamed this word so loud. I was alone, my dog was there, and I didn't know what this word meant until it downloaded into me as like, you're ready. Okay, you're ready now. I know this. I can go and tell somebody else about this. And this could be a moment of YAR when it comes to learning. It can be a moment of YAR in life. I was up in the mountains in Banff for the first time. I got to the top of the gondola, and I was like, oh, YAR! That was something fantastic. But when it comes to learning, these are the moments that I want to inspire people to have, is those moments where you know, you absolutely know. I also did it for this woman. So after my first studies with neuroscience when I did Harvard, I wanted to do medical neuroscience because at the time, this gorgeous woman who was my grandmother was still alive. And she resided for the last years of her life at the Waldman Research Center in Toronto and Baycrest. They are one of the foremost best research centers for Alzheimer's, memory, dementia, and learning. And she started to get dementia, as you know, some people do when they get older. And I wanted to understand, how do I reach her? How do I connect with her? When she goes to places that I can't follow, how can I follow her a little bit? And through my studies and through my research, I was able to bring her back. Once in a while, I could bring her back. Now, this is where the story gets a little bit sad, but don't be sad, because I was really, really happy. By the time she said her last word, every day I would either call or just show up at the hospital when I was doing rounds, and this was our routine. I'd walk up to her. She'd be in the wheelchair, sitting in the hallway, and I'd lean down, and I'd be like, hi. And she'd look at me, she'd go, Lauren, as if she'd like seen me for the first time. And I'd be like, yeah. She's like, you didn't tell me you were coming. I said, it wouldn't be a surprise if I told you. And the last time I saw her, I went down and I said, hi. And she looked at me, she goes, Lauren. And then she had a stroke right in front of me. But I knew what was happening. I could see it. I could almost, you know the Matrix, when you can see things? I could almost see what was happening as the blood flow stopped into the one particular part of her brain, and she started to lose function. She lived for about 4 to 5 days afterwards, and I was blessed to have known what I knew at that time, because I could at least, for those last few days that she was alive, just surround her with the best energy, the best love, while she was still with us. I wish she would have made it to 100. She was damn close. She was 98 years old when she passed. This was 3 years ago. But I do this for her, and I do this for everybody and myself, because I'll tell you one thing. I got into neuroscience because I really wanted to be a better learning designer. I wanted to be a better professional at what I did. It will profoundly change you as a human being the more that you understand about this wonderful thing. So, this was the question that kept going through my head. Every time I learned something new, I was like, oh my God, how did I not know this? Some of what I'm about to tell you and what we're going to experience here together is very instinctual. And you're going to kind of have those moments too. It's like, how did you not know this? Here's how you didn't know this. Hands up if you've ever been in an MRI before. Anyone ever been in a scanner? Yeah? Do you have any idea what those things started off like? You're about to be terrified. Check this out. 1977. This man, Dr. Damadian, professor, 1977 with his grad student, he builds this thing. Now, this air conditioning type unit thing around his, there's no way you could have gotten me to go into this thing, but his grad student He went into it. Now check his face out. Doesn't look so confident anymore. Now, very fortunately for us, those turned into these. And because we've got this, the technology in science is absolutely phenomenal now, we can now look into the brain in ways that we've never been able to look before. Now, neuroscience is still a new science, but we're still learning a lot. And because we're learning a lot, I have got these amazing, these are some of my nerds. I've collected my nerds around the world, and these are part of my board of advisors. That means that anything that I say to you today, anything that I do in my career, always goes through them, because what's very important as a science translator is that we maintain the credibility of science. So all of that stuff that you see on TikTok and YouTube and all these crazy things that we keep seeing, trust these guys first. Okay, heads up before we get started. I am a scientific learning designer, which means that this whole experience has been scientifically designed. This is not a keynote, this is an interaction, which means you get to participate. But you don't have to if you don't want to. You're adults, you have choice. But if I'm asking you to do something, or if something shows up on the screen, there's a reason for it. It's very intentionally placed. Are you ready to get this brain party started? Yes! It's yar, not woo, but we'll get there. All right. If you are sitting next to somebody right now, can you, and if not, just think about it in your own head, what is something you are truly amazing at? And I want you to tell the person beside you, or just think about it to yourself, what is it that you are so amazing at? I'm amazing. My amazing, and I learned this over COVID, I can make the best grilled cheese sandwich. I'm very proud of this. I can't bake for my life, but I can make a good grilled cheese sandwich. Okay. Have you shared your amazings? Okay. Now tell them this. What are you so epically bad at? Got some laughs over here, we got some smiles over here. Must be good, must be good. Okay, so I hear some giggles, I hear some laughter. This is exactly what we want. Why did I ask you this? Well, there's a couple of reasons why I asked you this. When we're going to start learning, we know with the shadow of a doubt that emotions are part of almost every cognitive function. So it's great to flush our brains a little bit with some of that wonderful serotonin and the dopamine. It also helps to consolidate learning through memory. This beautiful piece of your brain that's floating up on the screen, if you put your hand just behind your forehead, or just on your forehead right there, that's your prefrontal cortex, it's your executive function. We want that, we need that. But what just happened to you is you had an emotional reaction, which is this part. Now, what you're watching up there is a simulation. If you were to take your hand and you see your thumb and you put that in the middle of your hand like that, that would represent the emotional center of your brain. I like to call her Amy. She's a bit of a diva. Now, Amy is really, really, really powerful, because what you're seeing up there is a simulation of what's called an amygdala hijack. She can take the executive function, I call him Corey. She has the power to take Corey offline. So you know when you lose your mind, you flip your lid? Yeah, she's in control, ladies. I've got a 4-year-old, no, she's not 4-year-old, my God, she's 6. 6-year-old niece who I've been teaching about her brain since she was 3 years old. And 2 days ago, I catch her on one of those little play structures outside on the front lawn with the neighborhood children. And she's giving them a lecture about Amy and Corey. I'm like, I'm so proud of you right now. So proud of you. The reason why this is important is a couple of things. We've gone through a lot the past couple of years. Who do you think's in control most of the time? Amy, right. Now, it's a very special skill to know about your brain and to know how to down-regulate when you're watching somebody take the last roll of toilet paper and the no-frills from the outside of the supermarket, or when someone's all of a sudden standing way too close to you. But this is a really important part to learning, is that we want some stress. Some stress in learning is really good. We want that. But we don't want it to be overwhelmingly stressful, because then the executive function goes offline. Now, fun fact for you about life, Amy can act 4 to 10 times faster than Corey. 4 to 10 times faster. Now, we can downregulate very quickly as well. Do you know how we downregulate really quickly? It's really simple. Deep breath in. Hold it. Let it out. That actually works, believe it or not. There's a whole bunch of science about vagal nerve stimulation, and then there's stuff about oxygenation in the lungs, but we won't get to that. The other thing that happened when I was asking about your amazings is you were doing this. You were thinking about thinking. Now, this is something that we called metacognition. Metacognition is a theory. It's very old, but 1975. But what it shows us is that we want to become the audience to our own performances. So what does that actually mean? When we're learning, we often plow through things. Now, we've been learning the same way for over, I don't know, 220 years, probably a lot more. So we've got very strong behavioral patterns about how we learn. When we learn to become the audience to our own performance, we can actually catch what we are thinking in the moments that we are thinking it. And this is what we want. We want you to understand and keep questioning, what do you know? What don't you know? But what do you think you know? That's really important. When I'm designing learning, I don't want somebody to get to the end of it and then realize, I didn't know that. I need to catch them while it's happening. So whether you're a student and you're studying, or whether you're a teacher and you're designing your lessons, we want these moments to happen. I know, terrible gifts. But you'll remember it. We want to have these moments, and this is why the beauty of science comes into the design of learning, is we can design in these measurements. Now, when we do this, we're looking at it from two ways. From the person who's designing the learning, you then have a beautiful measurement of how people are doing as they're going through it. If you're absorbing the learning, and we're going to get to memory in a bit, you then have to sort of catch yourself and go, do I really know that? Because otherwise, what's going to happen? I know I look really youthful, but 20 years ago, I would have been sitting in a coffee shop until, I don't know, 6 in the morning before an exam, cramming. Oh, nods. Oh, that's you guys, huh? Way to keep the habit alive. So we want to make sure that we're designing in measures for these metacognitive moments where we're checking in with ourselves. So whether you are teaching something or whether you are learning something, I want you to remember these things. What do I know? What don't I know? What do I think I know? Okay, the rest of the talk, I'm setting the bar really, really low. Here's what you're going to learn in the next 45 minutes. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. It's just not going to happen. The brain doesn't work like that. But we are going to show you how the brain does work. So let's see what you know about your brains. First of all, let's see what you're working with. Put that down for a sec. If you want to see the size of your brain, just put one hand in front of you, make a fist, put your thumb down on top, the other one. Put those puppies together. Take a look down, roughly the size of your brain. If you put those up in the air, take a look around. You can see what everyone else is working with. I could say something inappropriate like size doesn't matter, but it really doesn't in this case. So what's the inside that counts? Okay, let's piece one of these things together. Now you get to see what, this is my not so amazing. I can't draw for the life of me, but I damn well try. So here's the pieces of your brain. We have all of these things called neurons, those cells, right? But those neurons, and you can follow along on your hand if you want. Those receivers, those dendrites, those would be your fingers, right? The center of your palm, that would be the cell body. And then your arm kind of acts as that axon. It's a highway of information. So these are the three sort of pieces that make up the cell. Put them together and it looks like this. You have 86 billion of these up here. It's crazy. And I don't know about anybody in this audience, but I don't have 86 billion of anything. So that's really impressive to me. Now, a real one looks like that. That's just one. That is one from the back of our heads. It's called the occipital lobe. It's our primary visual centers. And that's just one. Now think about it. You've got 86 billion of those. For every one of those cells, you can have up to 1,000 of those tree branches sticking out. Now here's super cool. You might not have seen this before. We grow them. 99% of you have never met me before. You've never seen me before. You've never heard my voice before. You're growing something like that to represent me. If you choose to remember me, if we stay in contact, if you start encoding my voice, that'll stay. But we can also watch those disappear. Okay. Did that blow your mind? Have you ever seen that before? Have you ever seen a cell grow? That's in your brain. That's happening. It's about to get really wicked crazy in here too. So that was just a scratch at the surface. If that didn't blow your mind, see all those little red and yellow dots? Again, one cell. That's where the magic happens. Those are called synapses. Now, those are how chemical messages are sent. And they are the essence to learning. They change, they're manipulated, they send these crazy messages. So what happens is we start off with an electrical signal that comes in through the tree branches. If that signal is strong enough, think about like a wave. You know, like when you go to a sporting event and they do the wave? Think about that. If the signal is strong enough, right? If the person sitting in the middle actually wants to pass along that signal, it keeps going. So it goes from an electrical signal to a chemical one, and it's passed through these tiny, tiny little things. Now, this is really hard conceptually for us to like think about. So think about it like this. If you were to stick your hand in a bunch of cake frosting, dip it in a bunch of sprinkles, that's that. You can do this with kids. It's a lot of fun. Or do it with yourself. It's a lot of fun. But that's what it kind of looks like. Now, in order for you to conceptualize this a little bit, check this video out. This is just a really quick 1 minute on how the brain is actually communicating.
Neurons communicate with each other, relaying messages throughout your body and powering all of your thoughts and actions. Neurons talk to each other using both electrical and chemical signals. Messages start as electrical signals traveling rapidly down a neuron. These signals are called action potentials. When they reach the gap between two neurons, the messages need some help to get across. The information is transformed from an action potential into a chemical message, which crosses the gap called a synapse. The release of those chemical messengers can trigger an action potential in the neuron on the other side of the synapse, conveying the message onward. Or it can quiet the message. This happens over and over and over. And with repeated activity, the synapse gets stronger, so the next message is more likely to get through. That way, neurons learn to pass on important messages and ignore the rest. This is how our brains learn and adapt to an ever-changing world.
That was by brainfacts.org. They're cool. They've got 3D brains that you can play with on their website. Okay, so we are stuck. So what is learning? Learning is not what we think it is. Learning is this. It is the destruction, it's the creation, it's the changes. It's the rewiring, the manipulation of the synapses. This is learning from the inside out. Is this not crazy? This is happening in your brain right now. I could look at this day in and day out and just still be amazed by it. Have you ever seen this before? Are you guys okay? Is this freaky? You okay? It can be quite overwhelming to think like, this is controlling your everything. It's through the manipulation and the change of all these little pieces going on up there that we are able to do anything that we do. We're good? Okay. Awesome. There is a gateway to learning. Any idea what that could be? Just yell it out if you have any guesses. What's the gateway to learning? What? Mount Royal University. Well, how am I supposed to top that? Oh, emotional reactivity. Well done, everybody. It's not a meditative dog. The gateway to learning is focus. There's a problem, though. Do me a favor. Try and keep your attention on that for about 30 seconds. Just keep your eyes on the heart. Yeah, there's no way you're going to pass that. Focus is your gateway to learning. But now, contrary to popular belief, the brain has not changed all that much. You hear it on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, all the stuff. Our attention spans, it's not that our brain has changed. It hasn't changed. It's our behaviors that have changed. and we can take harness of those. But here's the thing. Focus is your gateway to learning, but attention is the mechanism to focus. Now, don't worry about all these fancy little brain images up there. What I wanted to show you is that focus isn't a spot like this. Focus is more about a dimming switch. And all of these gorgeous attentional networks, we can harness those when we are learning. So that little trick that I showed you about lifting up your chin, that's one of them. The 30 seconds, we're going to do it again. That's another one. But we can train the attentional networks. We can practice it through skills, the cultivations of like meditation. And we can talk about that for eons and eons. Meditation is something that I do regularly, but I hated it when I first started. And talk to me in the reception about that, because that's always a fun story. But what I wanted to show you here is that this is basically how your brain is going to focus, by using attentional networks and dimming down the environmental sounds. You know, if you've been in a restaurant before and somebody like calls your name and you instantly go like that? Yeah, it's your attentional networks guiding your attention to focus on what just happened. So your implications for learning. Let's try this again first, and I'm not going to mess with you this time, I promise. You can look anywhere in the room. You can even close your eyes if you'd like. When you are learning, though, when you're going to sit down and do like some hard focusing, you can either stare at, you can look at your screen, that's okay, but keep that focus for 30 seconds, 30 to 60 seconds. So go ahead and try again. I'm not going to mess with you this time, I promise. You might want to take some nice big breaths in while you're doing it. Okay. Here's another little trick. Take 2 quick breaths in. Hold it. Let go. Again. Last time. So there's 2 contrary actions. When we take those really nice, long, relaxing breaths, we're telling we're sort of doing the calm response, telling the central nervous system and Amy, we're good, calm down. When we take the short, quicker breaths, we're stimulating a stress response. So we're stimulating epinephrine into our system. So when we combined, you need 2 really cool neuromodulators in your brain. One's called acetylcholine, the other one is epinephrine, otherwise known as, anyone? Adrenaline. When we balance those 2, we're in a really good place for learning. So doing the 30 seconds and then just stimulating that, we're balancing out our neurochemistry to help us to focus and learn. Now, when it comes to attention, this is the questions you want to ask yourself. If you're designing, you have to think, where do I want to guide somebody's attention to help them to be able to focus? So if I'm designing something that's for online, or if you'll notice my slides, black and white, very simple. And you're going to see why. I'm going to show you resources in the brain. You're going to understand why. And then how can you facilitate? And you can facilitate this for yourself. When I'm training in workshops, I encourage people to take just a Post-it note and put it on their screen, and it says, where is my attention? Because whatever you're giving your attention to is where your focus is going. So if you start sort of wandering off, where's my attention? That's where my focus is going. Okay. The brain is expensive. And the currency, do you have any idea? If the brain's expensive, what's the currency? Heard some, you're whispering to yourselves. I'm sorry? Oh, that's a good one. Oxygen, glucose. I'm going to tell you after this. This was an fMRI. Now what you're seeing is the colors represent activation in the brain and blood flow. So when we're looking at anything that is a blue or a purpley, it's lower activation. Reds, yellows, and oranges, higher activation. This was a real live fMRI. What do you think this person was doing while they were in there? Yell it out. There's nothing that you can say that could offend me at this point I've heard it all. Sudoku? That's like my worst nightmare. It was not Sudoku. Bingo. Nothing. They were doing absolutely nothing. Your brain is lighting up like a Christmas tree, and you're doing absolutely nothing. The brain's currency is energy. And as we're learning and as we're teaching, this is what we want to protect. When I'm designing learning, I am very consciously aware that I want to protect the energy of the brains that I am serving. So, who's up for a little experiment? Is that a yar? Are you guys scared? I'm going to stand over here so you guys can see the screen. Okay. On the screen, you're going to see a bunch of words pop up. What I want you to do is identify the color of the word as fast as you can. Okay? You ready? All right, let's have some fun. Okay, great. Let's do it again. As fast as you can, the color of the word that shows up on the screen. Here we go. What? 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 There's no way you're going to pass that either. Classic psychological experiment called the Stroop test. Now, what was going on in there? It's funny, right? Good party tricks. Got loads of them. Here's what's going on. Preventing you from reading the word, processing the color, speaking the response, resolving information conflict. That's 4 things. I could keep listing more things that your brain was doing during that time. Does that sound like a lot of things for you to be doing at one time? Yeah, right? Now let's think about learning. When we've got too much going on, when we've got the animations going, we've got the music going, we've got the people speaking at you, it's so much. So when you start to think about your brain as like a multitude of resources, you then can understand how we want to design learning a little bit more effectively and how we can harness and use this information to study and to take in our learning a little bit more effectively. So create the environment that you need in order to help those attentional networks focus. Now, oh, come on, I was a student too. I was like, what was that thing that you just said? That thing, I mean, I go to conferences all the time and I'll spend 8 hours in sessions. And at the end of it, I'm like, where are the drink tickets? But here's the thing. Let me ask you if you ever had this experience. You're sitting at home or you're with friends or whatever, and someone gets, you see someone getting up to go get something from the kitchen, and you're like, hey, can you grab me a glass of water on your way back? And you watch them go to the kitchen, and you watch them slowly come back to the couch. Do they have the water? No. Our working memory is incredibly limited. So we have to really play in the space. That's why I call it joining forces with your brain. We don't control this thing, but we can definitely join forces with it. You're limited to your working memory, so your cognitive load is incredibly important, so how much you take in at one time. Now, the latest research does show that we can sustain focus for 90 minutes, which is quite a long time when you think about it, but you do need to cultivate a good practice to be able to do that. But yeah, Homer Simpson's. Our applications to learning here, you gotta be strategic. You have to be incredibly strategic and incredibly intentional with what it is that you're putting into your learning sessions. Not sure which? These. Your abilities, your skills, your knowledge. What is it that you are transferring? Once you get into the space that I play in organizational worlds, they love to fire hose employees. Anyone here ever been through an onboarding experience? Oh, listen to those groans. Exactly. First you get fire hosed with information, and then you get, show horsed around the office. Have you met this person? Have you met? And by the end of it, you have no idea who anybody is or where you are, and you just want to go because we've exhausted. So we want to really focus our attention on what can we transfer? What are those transferables? What are the nice to knows versus the needs to knows? And then be mindful of how expensive the brain is. Protect those energies, protect the resources. And then finally, how many resources in the brain am I using? Now, I don't expect you to know the answers to all of this right now, but if you've got the radio going, you've got like Netflix playing in the back, if your phone's over there and it's clicking off notifications and you're trying to learn something, well, you've already exhausted your cognitive load. So be very, very mindful. Now, here's where this comes in really cool handy on your day-to-day. And this was me before I was really starting to train my brain. And I'm sure you've all had moments like this. It's like, there I am, I've got to go, I'm running out the door, got to get to the car. or usually I'm in Toronto, so I'm running to the TTC. I get halfway down my block, and I'm like, oh, damn it, I forgot my phone. I'm back. And then the last few years, it was, oh, damn it, I forgot my mask. Because my working memory was just not on point. But when I stop and I pause and I recognize, okay, if I'm rushing out the door, what part of my brain? Is it Amy or is it Corey who's in charge? Amy, yeah, she's like, stress running out the door. So I need to bring Corey back online so I can really ask myself, how many resources am I using here right now? Can I slow it down? Otherwise, you just have to listen to that song, Phone, Keys, Wallet. Look it up. It's Adam Sandler. It's really funny. All right. Oh, see, you just did it. I didn't have to do anything. I'm going to ask you just for a moment just to come into my favorite place in the world, which is the forest. You guys are so lucky to live here. I just came in from Banff this morning. Take a big breath in. I'm going to ask you just for a few moments to close your eyes. I'm just going to sort of down-regulate a little bit. Let's protect some of the energy that's going on. 4 o'clock, I think. And at this point, you can just tap in. You can sort of feel your feet sort of lying heavy on the ground. You can release a little bit of tension from that. You can move up to your calves. Take a big breath in. And just release. See if you can release any more of that tension. Up into your stomach. In your hips. We've been sitting for a little bit now. Maybe your hips. Maybe you need to shuffle around in your seat a little bit. Big breath in. Send it right down to those hips. Usually where most people keep their tension is through their neck and their shoulders. I like to do this. I just like to scrunch my shoulders up as high as I can go. Big breath in. Release them. Oh, that feels good. Can we do another experiment? Yar. Okay, this one requires a little bit of trust. Okay, let me just do this. Okay, most of you are sitting next to somebody, and if you're not, you can just have some fun watching this all go down. So, why don't you get up on your feet? Let's get some standing going on here. Get to, with the person that you're standing with, establish who's a number 1 and who's a number 2. Oh, I know that, so come on. Okay, we got a number 1, we got a number 2. Number 2s, can you close your eyes, please? Number 1s, can we confirm when number 2s if their eyes closed? Give me a yar or hands up. Okay, number 2s, I need you to, they got to keep your eyes closed, okay? Make sure you guys accountable. Okay, 1s, read the screen. 2s, keep your eyes closed. You guys ready? I'm just going to go back to this screen. Okay, number 2s, you can open your eyes. Number 1s, get to work. Okay, go ahead and say, by the laughter, I see that this worked. Okay, this is what your friends there had on the screen. This was their job. Now, go ahead and sit down if you're standing up. What you just witnessed was the wonderful thing of memory. Now, I did this a couple of weeks back. I was in Minneapolis with an organization, and I did this, and I failed to remember that it was just Easter. So they all knew. I was like, what did you have last night? Ham. And I was like, oh, damn. I'm like, how did you guys all know that? They're like, it was Easter. I'm like, oh, okay. Good learning moment for me. Segue to memory. What's the point of learning? The point of learning is to create a memory. Now, what this is this was a child about 5 or 6 years old. And again, if you can remember that the the greens, the yellows, the reds, that's high activation. So that second after is the activation. We saw activity in this part of the brain where there wasn't before. This was a child who was about 5 or 6 years old, and they were learning their phonetics. They were learning apple, BB, bus. I should learn my phonetics. But this is what learning is, and this is what creating memory in the brain is. It's about creating those networks that we saw growing in order to activate the parts of the brain that were that weren't activated before. So this is the sort of the high-level overview of memory, right? Things come in, things come in. If we remembered everything, you know those old alien movies where their brains are like in a bubble or something? Yeah, that's how I imagine we would look. Here's the key. Your working memory is your gateway to memory. This is where we really, really have to rehearse, and we have to keep our focused. And we're going to go into the sort of encoding process, because your goal is to get here, to long-term memory. Now, there are multiple places in the brain where memories are stored. They never come back out the same way they go in, but they are amazing when we activate them. But without practice and without rehearsal, we just don't get there. So let's go through this process, the encoding process. This is when you're really burning through those calories. This is when you're hard learning. Now, I've been told that I'm a little bit of a tiny human who can eat an exceptional amount of food when I am researching. So you'll see, if you ever come into my office during a time when I'm like looking at those white papers and really into it, there's snacks everywhere. I eat a ton. But this is the encoding process. Now, we're looking at how this information is getting in there. You're going to be burning through a lot of energy, but this is when we have to focus. We need that focus time. So we want to be making sure that we're using the resources of the brain as effectively and as efficiently as possible. Step 2, storage. This is really important. How, where, how much? We need to practice. You might have heard use it or lose it, what wires together fires together. By the way, that wasn't Donald Hebb. Talk about that afterwards. You got to practice it. So you remember how you saw all those networks growing? And the synapses sending those chemicals? When we're first learning, we need to strengthen it. And the signals will start going faster and faster the more that we practice, the more that we rehearse. So this is an incredibly important step. And then the third step, oops, is no longer on my screen because it's probably, oh, right. I was going to mess with you again. That's what was going on there. OK, let's try this one out. Months of the year. Wait. Excellent, gold star. Anytime you're ready, verbally, and actually, can I just make sure that your hands are up so I can see that you've got no phones in your hands, no, you're not writing anything down. This is, OK, I'm standing over here because the spotlight's in my face, but there we go, hands up. All right, when you're ready, I want you to start listing the months of the year in alphabetical order. Go. Oh, just stop. Just give it up. Why is that so hard? Why is that so hard? You didn't learn it like that, did you? Right. So the way that we learn it is going to become very hard because we learned it in a very specific way, and that represents our mental representation of it. So if we want to go ahead and change that, it becomes very difficult. I could talk about unlearning and change of the brain. That's a whole other series of talks. But keep in mind, those mental representations, when you're learning something new, if it's attached to something that you already know, some existing knowledge, remember those networks, those exist for that existing knowledge. So we have to find a way to make it different. We have to think about the mental representations that people are already coming in to the learning environment with. So, oh yeah, this is really important too. So, if I told you that I had like banked like 10,000 hours of Mario Kart, would you give me your car keys? Are you sure? Okay, the environment that you learn something in is not necessarily going to be the one that you transfer it in. This is incredibly important. You know, I remember when I was in school, I gave a talk years ago on the legacy of learning, and I gave my top 10, it was like a David Letterman's top 10 list about the things that I learned while I was in school. And it was things like I learned to cheat off the person next to me. I learned how to, repeat things often. because I didn't learn how to transfer it into the environment I was going to go into. Really, really important to keep that in mind. We're not confined to the classroom. Fun fact about Lauren, she studied psychology for half a semester in university before they kicked her out. Literally, I got banned from taking psychology classes. Was called into the academic advisors. They're like, you're failing horribly. You're literally not allowed to take these classes anymore. I was like, okay. Maybe that's because I'm in a lecture hall with 300 people, and you're just talking at me for like 3 hours. There was no way I was going to transfer that. Now, I won't tell you, you probably could look it up and find out what school I went to, but when I see them at conferences now, I'm like, look at me now. Last process here is when you can retrieve it. So we had encode, store, retrieve. These are how we basically get memories. The retrieval process is basically when you can do it whenever, you can do it subconsciously, you can do it without even thinking about it. It's the reason why when you stand up, you don't fall right down again, you learn to walk. So when it comes to learning, retrieval practice, incredibly important. And that's not cramming and like rote memorization, as I heard somebody else talk about. It's not about memorization. The brain doesn't even like that. And then it's those moments of, do I actually know this, or do I think I know it? And how long do I want to know it for as well is very important to the memory process. Maybe you don't need to know something for the rest of your life. Maybe you only need it for a couple of weeks. That's okay. But when we're wasting time Googling and we're wasting time in YouTube videos, when we really needed to learn something, this is when we really want to focus in, and why science and why the beauty of understanding our brains and understanding how we can design and learn with science is so amazing that we have that right now. Oh, right. This little thing. You gotta sleep. Learning, the process of memory is triggered by learning. Memory consolidates during sleep. Those 10-second do-nothings that we were doing throughout this whole time, there was a reason for that. I was trying to help your brain to consolidate some memory. You won't remember any of this. You'll remember some of it. But it's a way in which we can help to consolidate memory during the process. We can take these little gaps. We can take these little breaths. Now, I don't know about any of you. I love to take a 3 o'clock nap. Fortunately, I'm still on Toronto time, so we're past my nap time. But whether it's sleep, and you can see this, if you looked it up, you can see that what happens when we're sleeping is a couple of things. Number one, neurotoxins, neural waste that build up in your brain throughout the day, it flushes out through the central nervous system because the brain shrinks enough for it to happen. We can watch this happen. It's really gross and phenomenal at the same time. But this is when those networks, that's when they're doing their stuff, while we're sleeping or while we're in deep rest. So a 20-minute rest can be just as effective for helping consolidate a memory as a full sleep. I love a good 20-minute nap or meditation. I have 100% exhausted your brains at this point, but I will say that it is an absolute joy to have been here with you guys today. There was no doubt in my mind. I said to everyone who I've spoken to today that if I was going to leave the forest and the mountains for anything, it was going to be on this stage. So I thank you so much. Thank you so much for being... Yar? Yar.